Good morning or good afternoon, depends where you're joining us from. Welcome to Hope's webinar. I'm Helen Torres, CEO of Hope, Hispanas Organized for Political Equality. Thank you for joining us from across the United States for this important conversation. Before we begin, I want to remind everyone that you can submit your questions at any time using the Q&A box. We'll address as many as we can towards the end of today's program. Today marks a milestone for Hope. Since launching our Economic Status of Latinas report series in 2013, we have analyzed data and shared insights at the state level, first in California and then most recently in New York. But this year, for the first time, we've taken our research nationally. The National Economic Status of Latina report connects data and community voices from across the country to tell a fuller story of Latinas' contributions, challenges, and potential. Our hope is that when we share today's outcomes of the report, it becomes a catalyst for action, sparkling conversations in your local communities and your organization and your networks about how we can collectively build on an economy where opportunity and prosperity are truly within all of our reach. We're thrilled to have such a diverse group of leaders, advocates, and community partners joining us today. Whether you're joining from California, Texas, Florida, New York, Illinois, or any of the amazing states that represent the United States, or even beyond, we hope that the data and insights we present are useful to you and that you promote and that collectively we can promote economic opportunities within our communities. Now, to help us kick off today's discussion, I'm honored to introduce Patty Juarez, a longtime Hope partner and champion of our Latina leadership. Patty is Executive Vice President of Public Affairs and External Engagement at Wells Fargo, which she has supported Hope's research and economic status of Latinas reports since the very first report over a decade ago. It is such an honor to introduce Patty and have her join us and to make a few remarks. Patty, welcome.
Thank you so much, dear Helen. Thank you for the kind introduction. As Helen mentioned, my name is Patty Juarez, and I lead our Hispanic and Latino strategy across the enterprise for Wells Fargo. I've been at the bank a short 30 years in a number of leadership roles. Most recently, I was asked to lead our Hispanic Latino strategy, which really focuses in three main areas: outreach and connection with our community, our Hispanic Latino community across the country. So I manage a lot of the national partnerships that we have at the bank with Hispanic Latino organizations. I also lead work around our colleagues and the representation internally at Wells Fargo of our Hispanic Latino employees, which represent 18% of the company and the largest minority group at Wells Fargo. And I have the pleasure of also leading the work around taking care of our important clients, our amazing clients. And that entails working with all of the lines of business across the bank to ensure that we have all the products and services and that we take care of our customers holistically and help them achieve their financial goals. Buenos días a todos. Today is such a special day as we unveil the report, as Helen mentioned, of the economic status of Latinas. It's a national report. We are so excited to share the insights and the findings of this report with all of you, our distinguished audience. We are even more excited to share that Latinas are powering America's economic future. Our influence is enormous and our power continues on the rise. We make contributions in our homes. We make contributions in our workplaces and in business. Latinas are starting businesses at a higher rate than anybody else. And this all has a tremendous positive impact in the lives of so many, and particularly in the health of our economy, of our country. And yet, there are still significant barriers and gaps to our success, particularly around the area of pay. This report will provide us valuable information so that we may begin the work of together reducing and eliminating barriers. Why? So that our Latinas who are ready to lead, who are coming in strong, who are getting educated at a faster and faster pace and attaining college degrees can begin to reshape our economy for decades to come. So I am humbled to be a part partner to Helen. And we are indeed very proud to be your partner in this report, in this national report, and that'll put us on the map as a really idea generating tank at Hope of what we can do to help our Latinas, succeed in a holistic way. So Helen, thank you so much for being an amazing partner to us. Thank you so much for leading us into this space where we can have the data that we need to really tackle the problems and the gaps that we see to help our Latinas be successful in the long run. And what we can do today, can start benefiting them right away, and what we can do in the future to ensure that they're set up for success and that our daughters and those coming behind us, have the maximum opportunity to be productive members of our society at the highest of levels. So thank you, Helen, for your leadership. We are just always in awe of everything that you're able to do here at Hope, and we appreciate you in so many ways. And I'll toss it back to you to get us started on these amazing findings.
Thank you so much, Patty. I want to take a moment of privilege and executive privilege, I should say, and ensure that our viewers and, for this is being recorded so we can use it literally on the record, to just acknowledge you, Patty. You have been a tremendous advocate for our community within Wells Fargo and outside of Wells Fargo. You have been one of those key voices that ensures that not only Latinas are represented at a variety of different leadership tables, but that you come and have our back. And that is not a small, not something to be thought of lightly, because you take time. And I really appreciate the mentorship you have provided Hope and the constant support Wells Fargo has provided us over a decade in supporting our research in ensuring that a Latina voice is being heard and our economic prosperity is being taken seriously. So thank you so much for your investment.
Thank you, Helen.
Now I have a great pleasure to introduce one of the key Latina leadership researchers in our nation. She has been a constant advocate for research that specifically talks to the Latina experience and highlights the Latina experience. We have had the pleasure of working with Dr. Elsa Macias since the first Economic Status of Latina report over 13 years ago. She is the author and lead researcher of the National Economic Status of Latinas report that we present today. Dr. Macias has worked closely with our team to analyze national data, elevate community voices to ensure this report reflects both the numbers and the lived experience of Latinas across this nation. Dr. Macias will walk us through the report's findings, and afterwards we'll return and have a guided Q&A discussion with her. I am very excited to turn over the program to present the report and the findings of our focus groups that were conducted over 5 different states to our incredible Dr. Elsa Macias.
Thank you so much, Helen. I am so honored to be here presenting the culmination of all of this work for the last few months. I'm just going to go ahead and jump right in here because there is a lot of information. I wanted to also say that the report is quite extensive, and I'm not going to go through all of it. Obviously, there's no way. I'm hoping that our people who are participating today will go back and take a look at it and leaf through it and have any questions, and either today or later. But I am going to hit some just a few areas. So just to start, then I'm going to let you know that we found areas where Latinas are making great progress, but also many areas where they are struggling. We also found differences in the outlook of many Latinas that we spoke with as they face uncertainty about the economic future and what it means for their finances specifically, but also for the community, their families. But let me just tell you what we did first. Next. Maya, yeah, thank you. So we collected data from a wide range of sources at the national and state levels to understand how Latinas in our country are faring, and that includes comparing them to other groups of women. We examined data from government sources such as the U.S. Census Bureau, the Bureau of Labor Statistics, the National Center for Education Statistics, the Federal Reserve Bank, among many, many others. Plus, we also looked at various reports, briefs, polls from across the country to understand how Latinas across the country are doing financially. We also included snapshots of from 5 states that have the largest populations of Latinas, and that's California, Texas, Florida, New York, and Illinois in that order. Additionally, we conducted, as Helen just mentioned, we conducted a series of focus groups that with Latinas, and we recruited Latinas of varying ages from different regions within those 5 states and of various backgrounds. To be able to understand, we wanted to be able to get more detail, the information, the data that we're collecting, the quantitative data, and the reports that we looked at give us a lot of good quantitative data, but we wanted to be able to hear from the women themselves. What is your life like? What are your financial goals? What does it look like to be living your life right now? And what is it that you are hoping for your future? So, and we also wanted to understand from them, what do they need to be better supported? So I'll just share some very high level findings from the report with you now. So next, thank you. Let's just look at some of the demographics. So Latinas made up nearly 10% of the nation's population in 2024. And, I want to make sure that for everyone listening, I'm mostly talking about, unless I'm talking about Hispanics or Latinas and Latinos, I'm going to be mostly talking about Latinas. So we are about 10% of the nation's population, and that's because we're almost 20% if we include Latinos and Latinas together. So 10% of the nation's population in 2024. That means that 1 out of every 10 people in the country is a Latina. And the projections estimate that by 2060, we'll be well over 13% of the country. In California and Texas, Latinas comprise around 20% of the total. So in 5 states that we looked at, that's at the graph at the bottom there, the figure at the bottom there, the Latina share of the population ranges from 20.2% in California, and that's the highest share, down to the lowest in Illinois at 9.5% of the population. And as a group, Latinas are a relatively young demographic. They are younger, that the median age is 31.6 years. That is younger by 7.6 years than the median of the total population. If we look at all of the people in the country, Latinas are considerably younger. And then if you compare them to white women, we are 14 years younger. White women are the oldest female demographic, so we are considerably younger than that demographic. Next. Some of you may have heard over the last few years that Latinas are really, really enthusiastic entrepreneurs. Latina entrepreneurs make a significant contribution to the nation's economic engine. They generate $184.8 billion in revenue. That was in 22, the last year for which we have the data. And of the 2.4 million Latina-owned businesses, 95% of them are non-employer firms. That means that they don't have employees. It's just them doing whatever the business is that they're doing. Could be a chiropractor, could be, whatever it is. The other 5% are employer firms. These are firms that have employees anywhere from one to, could be hundreds. And those employer firms created over 893,000 jobs and had a payroll of $32.4 billion in 2022. Now, looking specifically just Latina-owned non-employer firms, they represent 16% of all women-owned non-employer firms. And Latina-owned employer firms were 9.3% of all women-owned employer firms. So, Latinas are slightly more likely to be non-employer businesses than they are to be employer businesses. And then the other thing I wanted to point out is that Latina-owned businesses are overrepresented in industries that are more likely to generate lower revenues, such as healthcare and social assistance, food services, nail services. And also, they're more likely to be sole owners than they are, for instance, to be part of a partnership, something like that. So there are other issues that Latina entrepreneurs face, like big problem with access to capital that could make a huge difference if some of those barriers were overcome. Next. Economic power. Look, Latinas are contributing $1.3 trillion to the GDP. That's a lot of money. That compares to just over $4 trillion for the overall Hispanic GDP. But Latinas also control about 80 to 85, depending on the source, 80 to 85% of the purse strings in the household. So either way, any way that you look at it, Latinas have a lot of control over how their money gets used in the economy. But then you start to look at Latina median earnings, their own earnings, just looking at their own median earnings. They also grew by 36% between 2019 and 2024. And now, even though their annual earnings are still lower than for other women, they don't have earnings nearly as high as those for Asian women, certainly. They're still growing fairly quickly. On the right side of this slide, it's the not so great news. It's the wage gap which many of you may be familiar with. It's the gap between earnings compared to white men's earnings. And you can see that although all women experience a wage gap, the wage gap for Latinas is, quite frankly, just egregious. In 2024, that wage gap was Latinas with any earnings, and this is important, any earnings means could be women who are working full-time, part-time, seasonal, and we look at this particular metric because women are more likely to be in this category than they are to be in the full-time year-round category. So we thought it's really important. This is more of a reflection of where women stand. So women with any earnings, the Latinas were making just 54 cents for every dollar made by a white man. Now, as you can see, between 2023 and 2024, we did improve. We closed that gap by 3 cents in 1 year. And that is the only group of women, Latinas are the only group of women with any earnings to do so. So that's tremendous. If you look at women who are working only at women who are working full-time year-round, then Latinas maintained. Asian women were able to close the gap by 3 cents, and they're already very, very close to what men are doing. So Asian women in general are doing much, much better than every other group of women. I didn't include it here, but it's worth noting that Black women experienced a widening or worsening wage gap for 2 consecutive years, and that is certainly a concern. Next. So this is where we shine. Latinas college degree attainment is just phenomenal. Latinas 25 and over with at least a bachelor's degree. That means that includes bachelor's degrees, master's degrees, doctorates, law and medical degrees all together. If you look at that, we've increased by 23% in 2023, which is a 60% improvement since 2010. That is pretty phenomenal. That is pretty amazing. And so that's where we're making great progress. We didn't go into unfortunately, the many areas where we do need to make more improvements, but I did want to highlight one area where just wonderful news. Next. So Latinas leading. Look, I've just pointed out where we're doing some pretty amazing things. We obviously have the education. Latinas bringing the Latina perspective to leadership roles. It ensures that the nation's diverse communities are really fairly represented. They have, as I've said, many Latinas have the education, the skills, the experience to fill these leadership roles in elected office and in the corporate world. But the number of Latinas in these roles remains very, very low. Latina representation on the boards of publicly traded companies is abysmally low at only 1.7% of all corporate board seats in 2024. And that's well below parity, which, as we said earlier, was 9.9%. Looking at the chart below, progress in elected office has been better since 2015. The number of Latinas elected to the U.S. House of Representatives stands at over 4%, which has doubled since 2015. 4% is still, again, far below parity, but an improvement. Looking at the very bottom row in this chart, you can see that the number of state representatives and state senators increased. That's the biggest improvement we've seen in statewide legislative office. It's increased by 150% in the past 10 years. So, I mean, a massive improvement like this sounds wonderful, but let me also remind you that 2.9% is still far below parity. Next slide, please. So we heard from a cross-section of Latinas through the focus groups that we conducted. These were done in the spring of 2025, and many of the issues, if anything, have become all the more magnified during the summer and into the fall this year. There were concerns about women's ability to afford the American dream. We're talking about 35 women across the country, ages early 20s through early 60s. So we feel like we had a really good representation from these 5 states that we're focusing on about what are the issues. Many of them were first-generation native-born women with strong work ethics and a determination to succeed. Several of the women we spoke with, particularly the Gen Z Latinas that we spoke with, report struggling with the high cost of living and debt. There were many, many discussions about how unaffordable housing, childcare, education, healthcare have become, and how those costs are negatively affecting their life choices. Everything from do I have another child? Do I have any children? At this point, when can I afford to have a child? When can I afford to buy a house? How am I going to be able to work and also pay for my education or my child's education or my parents, my parents' retirement? All of these questions were top and foremost for a lot of the women we spoke with. And yet many of these women are finding financial independence and success and are navigating ways to build health. A lot of these women were focused on financial literacy to build their wealth and plan for retirement. So the Latina interview respondents voiced their concern that their low levels of financial literacy, not all of them, but for many of them, that would limit their ability to invest and manage their retirement savings in a way that would help them, that would be to their benefit. However, one of the major differences from previous studies that we've conducted is that the women that we spoke with, and I'm talking about all ages, I'm talking about women in their early 20s all the way through, they were remarkably well informed about the importance of planning for retirement and creating diversified income streams. In fact, a lot of the younger women, I think if not all, then almost all of them had at least 2 jobs. Some of them had 3. Usually it was because they needed the jobs to make ends meet. A lot of them were also saying that, hey, even if they didn't need it, they would be working 2 or 3 jobs because they needed that financial security, and it was the only way that they were going to be able to save for retirement or save for the house or save for whatever it was. So, but for a lot of these women, so even though they understood the importance, they didn't always fully understand how to implement these ideas, these strategies to their greatest advantage. They felt that they, as a group, they felt that they needed financial advice, but didn't always know how to access that advice from trusted sources. And then the third category was the economic uncertainty that was palpable across the 5 focus groups, regardless of their actual financial situation. I'm talking about women who could barely afford to pay their rent, but also women who were doing objectively extremely well. They were all expressing concerns about the economy and the possibility that they might be headed for another recession, about how, how it might impact their financial situation. Latina respondents also discussed at length the weight of financial obligations to their parents or to their children who are dependent on their contribution, and how helping them might compromise their own plans for retirement or their ability to buy a house or whatever else it is. Next. Latinas also expressed, I'm just going to say that they expressed only cautious optimism about their financial prospects over the next year, and a few were not optimistic at all. It really depended on how they were doing financially at the moment. Now, this is a real difference from our previous reports. In our previous reports, Latinas have always been extremely optimistic, even through the last recession. I mean, they just are, the Latinas tend to be really hopeful about what's to come. However, even despite the fact that we were seeing less optimism, they all shared stories of resilience, of perseverance, of really working hard, of the lessons that they learned from their families, from their parents, and the importance of their family and then their community as they're trying to achieve their goals. So we can go from Liz in the lower right corner. She's in her early 20s, saying, "I'm worried about how I'll pay rent, so I'm not even thinking about buying a house," to Alexandra, there in the middle, saying, she shared with us, "I'm feeling good. I have a plan. I have a goal. I'm envisioning a future that's different from how I grew up," to Vanessa in her 30s, telling us that being Hispanic is her superpower. It's something that she feels is, she brings a different perspective to everywhere that she goes. So I'll stop there and I'm sorry, let's go to the next, yes. So as in past reports, Hope has crafted actionable recommendations, policy recommendations for addressing the barriers that Latinas encounter. I've listed them here. There's 6 different categories. I'm not going to go into detail because, in fact, we're hoping that this will be a catalyst for our discussion for the rest of the session. But these were recommendations based on our findings: education to workforce, things like fair pay policies that address the wage gap, how we get from college into good paying jobs, childcare, which came up over and over and over again, how women can work and still pay for childcare when it's so expensive. Home ownership and financial security for Latinas, as for most people across the country, their home is the primary way in which they build wealth. So how do Latinas get on that home ownership ladder to build wealth? Next. And small business growth, as I've also already said, Latinas are enthusiastic entrepreneurs. How do we ensure their success and break down the barriers like access to credit? Healthcare, not just Latinas, but this is really an issue that's on the national dialogue. And, as just like for Latinas, how do they afford healthcare coverage? How do they keep out of medical debt, which is the #1 way that people get into debt and end up filing for bankruptcy? maternal health concerns that they also have, and how that can also lead to more medical debt. And then the last one is something that's important to me as a researcher. How do we ensure that communities are counted, that the data is collected in a way that is disaggregated, so that we can see that it's not just what's happening in a particular community, but what's happening to Latinas. So it's disaggregated by gender and race and ethnicity, that we have trusted organizations to work with, and that we can ensure civic participation. So now with that, I will pass it back to Helen. And thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Macias. Always, as always, incredible data, both things, specific facts that we can celebrate and others that we have to really ponder of how, as a community, we can come together, organize, and solve for some of these issues. At this time, I not only want us to thank Dr. Elsa Macias for walking us through the findings and her incredible leadership in shaping this report, but also really want to invite all of you to download the report. You can see the QR code has been posted. Ensure that you're part of the conversation. And what we're doing this time around our recommendations, around policy recommendations, there is a set of policy recommendations that, quite frankly, if implemented, will support all communities, regardless of ethnicity, race, or gender. If these policy recommendations are implemented, we're going to be ensuring that there is a strong economic prosperity opportunity for everyone across the United States. So we do want to invite you to ask questions in the Q&A box. We do have Dr. Elsa Macias that will be able to answer them if you would like to ask some questions now. I believe we have 2 of them, and also welcome all of you to, either through your organization or yourself, to invite you to submit and fill out a survey that will help us track your recommendations of how Latinas and, quite frankly, everyone in the United States can continue on a roll for economic prosperity. So with that, I am going to see what the 2 questions are that I believe are in the Q&A box. And have that shared with you. So the first question is, are Gen X and older Latinas ready for retirement? Does the data indicate if, as a whole, will be able to weather further economic challenges? What an incredible question. Dr. Macias, I don't know if you want to join us in helping answer that from a data standpoint.
Yes, so it's a good question, because it's a concern for all Latinas, as it is for many people. One of the metrics that we looked at were the Social Security benefits, the average Social Security benefits for the different groups. And in fact, we do find that the Social Security benefits for Latinos and Latinas in general is low. It's lower than for others. And if we're already starting with less wealth, which is also covered in the report, if they have less wealth, if they have, if their homeownership rates are lower, and for many people they're going to have to live on their Social Security benefits, then it is a concern. Now, as I said, a lot of the Gen Zers were already thinking about their retirement. It was really impressive, but they're very concerned. We didn't delve into this, but we're starting to see that they're starting to strike out in different ways to build that security. So what looked like retirement for us does look different, or is starting to seem like it might be different for them. The important thing is that they are focused on this issue, and they're looking into different ways to make a brighter future for themselves. What it's going to end up looking like, I think, will depend on how much debt, student debt, they end up with, their ability to buy a house. That could be depending on where they live. If they're living, for instance, in New York City or Southern California versus in a smaller suburb of Dallas, Texas, that could make a difference there. So I'm sorry, I don't have a very definitive answer for you, but
Okay, I don't think there is a definitive answer, but you helped us kind of understand what the data is showing. I realized that Patty Juarez from Wells Fargo, I think she's still on. Patty, one of the key things from the report, also, if you, I'm not sure if you can join us still, one of the key things from the report is this conversation around having a trusted advisor around this financial literacy journey that we're on. Any thoughts around that? What can we do to, one, select a good financial advisor, and what is the work that needs to be done, quite frankly, by the financial institutions to ensure that that trust is in our community?
Thank you, Helen. That's a great question. And I would say, I always tell people you have to have a good CPA, you have to have a good lawyer, and you have to have a good banker in order to ensure your long-term success. And, in banking, it's all about relationships, right? And I think that in many respects, our Latina population and Latinos in general are underplanned and underpenetrated when it comes to that planning and wealth building, and the relationships that they could form with financial advisors. We see a large opportunity there to increase us providing those services in the industry in general. And it's not this isn't solely for Wells Fargo, but for most financial institutions. There's a lack of diverse financial advisors, right? And so, in many respects, sometimes when our community seeks help from a financial advisor, they might want to have an advisor that maybe looks like them or speaks the language. And I know that sometimes that's a challenge, but we are very focused on increasing the number of bilingual financial advisors that can help our customers if they want to conduct business in language. But I think it's also about a fit, right? You want to make sure that the person that is giving you this financial advice is somebody that you can see yourself trusting, that you like their background, that you like, the way they approach you. It's a very personal business, right? You get to know your financial advisor very well, and they have a lot of suggestions for you as to what to do with your wealth and investments, and how you should be looking at the future, in order to preserve and actually grow your assets. And so there's a lot of conversations that have to be had. And so my advice is always to pick a person that you identify with, that you feel comfortable with, that you feel really assured that they have the expertise, right, to guide you through those very, difficult decisions at times. They'll tell you to set up a trust, and all of those conversations come with so many questions as to what women want to do with their wealth and with their children and with their families. And so it has to be a relationship that is based
Oh, Patty, I think you froze for a
on
bit there.
trust. It's a relationship actually can identify with.
Yeah, thank you so much for that, Patty. I could tell from my own personal journey, it has been about trusted advisors, individuals. Your comadres can only take you so far if they don't have the background and the financial wherewithal to help you. So obviously, always have your kitchen cabinet, but do turn to key individuals that have the expertise to help us. And I think that's going to be really critically important. I see Eve from Illinois asks us how do we share this important data? Thank you so much, Eve, for this question. And how can we amplify the efforts and share these findings? The Hope team has put together a social media kit. It has been put on the webinar chat. We'll repost that so that you can share the report, download the social media kit. Please do get this information out to your various networks. We will be in San Antonio, Texas on December 11th presenting this data. And we hope to find a date that we can come out to Chicago sometime either by the end of this year or early next year to present the data as well. We were able to preview the data in New York and in beautiful Manhattan a couple of months ago. So we are doing a national tour. Let us know if you'd like us to come to your city and maybe have another webinar with a core group of women that you want to put together. So there's a variety of ways that you as individuals can amplify the conversation around economic empowerment in our communities, as well as Hope will be sending out additional information. And please do download the social media kit. Have a couple more questions here. Elsa, I think this might be helpful to have your input. Was there one state where Latinas are faring better? If so, what can we learn from those states that are supporting Latinas to ensure better economic outcomes?
Yeah, sure. So there were states. I mean, California and New York. I think part of it is that there's just there's a lot of there's a robustness about those states, and I think that part of it is because the population, the demographics. We're talking about 40% of Hispanic populations in both of those states, which means 20% of them roughly are Latinas. And there does tend to be a sort of a vibrancy, a dynamism that's going on there, a lot of presence of leadership. That doesn't mean that the other states are doing terribly, but I think also part of what we saw was, I mentioned the outlook. There was a lot of concern across the board, but we did see a lot more optimism in those same two states. They seem to be in, just their state of mind, their frame of mind was more of, we're going to do this, we're going to take it on, we're going to tackle it all on. And, these are very general issues that I'm talking about. And I don't want to give the mistaken suggestion that, oh my gosh, but if you don't live in California or New York, the Latinas are in, horrible shape. It's just, it was more of these slight differences.
I think one of the things that I recall, Elsa, and listening to some of the focus groups, it wasn't really around states, but it's something that you mentioned around generation, and that is specifically Generation Z and their innovation. They are ready to really have control and be the masters, and that's not the right word, of their own destiny, right? They are looking. I wanted to share this story I heard of one of the young women. If you recall, Elsa, it was during close to Easter time. And she was so excited because she said, "This is a great time for me because I start my third side hustle, in which she dresses up as an Easter bunny for various parties and also really was able to do really well in that third job." So, what we're seeing is the innovation. What I want us to really embrace is that the future is also not only looking like a Latina future because of our demographics, but we have to embrace technology with the advent of AI. And that's one of the things that I can see in a future report, really speaking to how is AI changing the the trajectory of Latinas. So that's what, Dr. Elsa Macias, I just wanted to put a pin on that, just so you know that that's going to be a next key question for our next report, because we need to be preparing for the future right now. I wanted to also just kind of highlight, Rosa, thank you so much for your comment about how oftentimes even our own social norms and cultural norms are often used not in the best way to keep us from asking for what we deserve, if it's for a pay raise or just not, I love your advice. Let's not hold back. Let's really speak up and ensure that our concerns, our voices, and that we're getting paid what we deserve to be paid. So thank you so much for that comment. I see Sonia Diaz is asking more about what did Gen Z Latinas say about childbearing and elder care. Some of us, like myself, find ourselves in the sandwich generation, I'm raising twin boys and they're going through college, paying for that, and then also making sure that my senior parents are taken care of. But Gen Z, Elsa, anything that they told us through the focus groups about this, about childbearing and concerns about their elderly parents? And then I also want to invite Patty, anything that we should be knowing about preparing if we're in the sandwich generation or Gen Z, about preparing to support our families as they get older.
I was actually, thanks, Helen. I was floored, frankly, by the Gen Z participants that we spoke with. On the one hand, as you said, Helen, you know, when I was 21, 22, 23, I was just, I was just so young. And and these women are so well informed, and they are ready to act. And even if they don't know yet, they haven't figured out exactly what they're going to do, they're go-getters. They're gonna go out and figure out, get the information. So that's one thing that's very, very different about them. Um, the one thing I will say about the childbearing and all of these, you know, taking care of their parents, um, they are concerned. So as you mentioned, we are very, very close to our community and to our families in general as Latinas. And there are many advantages to that. But some of these women also shared with us that they are already taking on the burdens of their parents' retirement. You know, and for, you know, it isn't, you know, there are a lot of these, their parents were immigrants, and they were focused on surviving and didn't have the opportunity for various reasons to save for retirement, but they were able to put their kids through college, or have a roof over their heads. And so now as their parents are getting older, several of the women in their 20s and 30s, you know, at all ages, but certainly at this young age, were already trying to figure out, how do they pay off their student loans? How will they pay for their houses? And how will they care for their parents who've worked so hard to provide for them? So that is this extra layer at a very young age. Certainly, I did not have that. I wasn't thinking about that when I was in my early 20s, but they already are. They are already thinking ahead that way. But again, as I said, they're taking on this extra layer of responsibility, but they're also trying to figure out pathways that, you know, I fortunately did not start until I was well into my 30s before I started thinking about longer term retirement and reaching out and, you know, figuring out not just my Comadre network, but trying to find out who could help me. In terms of childcare, I was amazed. I was really, I was surprised by how often it came up that women are making real time decisions about, based on their the economic uncertainty, their actual finances, about when will they have a child, and or, you know, they've got one child or they've got two child, will there be another one? And there was angst. There was, you know, these are not questions that they're taking lightly. There were, you know, they were talking about something that they've considered, that they've had discussions with their partners, with their families. You know, how do they afford it?
That is a big question. Patty, what are you seeing? So many women come to you and to the various financial institutions with these concerns, saying, look at our financials. We're working more than one job. We're trying to invest. Can we afford to have a family? And or we have a family and we have to take care of our elderly parents. What are you seeing as we're juggling this as Latinas?
Yes, it's a real concern, Helen. As Dr. Macias stated, Gen Zers are overwhelmingly willing, right, to take care of their parents. But one of the things that they need to understand and they need to do is understanding the cost, the true cost of caregiving, right? Because on average, the cost can be anywhere from like $50,000 or more per year. And what they need to understand is, what are those costs? Are they going to have to put their parents in a facility, or are they going to be living with them? What are the true cares of their health care? And I think a lot of what we find is that people don't often have conversations with their family members to talk to them early about what they need to do. So fewer than actually 40% of Gen Xers have had those conversations of their care plans with their children. And so I think if more conversations are had, obviously we can have a more productive plan in terms of how to take care of those expenses. But, 1 in 3 Gen Zers is going to have to pay, right, for the cost of their ailing parents and the healthcare. And and 26% of them will cover at least some portion of the cost, if not all, right? And so what we're seeing is overwhelmingly people are going to have to face these financial responsibilities. And so, it's important to focus on savings, right? Are we going to have the potential savings that we need in order to fund some of those expenses? Are we going to have the earnings potential, the earnings power to absorb those expenses, which are quite high, in addition to our own family's expenses? Like you said, there's the mortgage payment, there's a car payment, there's all these obligations. And so budget.
Oh no, I think you froze a little bit, Patty, but I think we got the gist of your advice. I mean, the fact of the matter is, we are living through a time where we're balancing a lot. I know when Hope started our college program, and we asked the college participants what are some of their top concerns, and the number one concern they vocalized to us was, if I can't contribute to my family income, are my parents going to be okay? Um, often don't get that from other communities. So our family values the importance of not only thinking about our individual finances, we see it as a family finance. And that is critically important. So thank you so much, Patty, for sharing that information. The fact of the matter is that Gen Z is innovative and they're caring, and they're going to be an incredible generation if we give them the right tools and we keep on investing in their education. I see a remark from Margaret. Margaret, I'm going to close out with that good news. So just stay on for that good news about a specific legislative bill that Hope has been championing and was able to get finally signed. But Lily, I'm going to turn to you and leave with this question. Do you think we will see increases in Latina representation in positions of power in the public-private sectors in more time, given increased degree attainment in recent years? That makes a lot of sense, right, Lily? That the fact is that as we're getting our higher education attainment among Latinas, that we're going to see more political representation, as well as more representation in a variety of different places, from if it's the corporate boardrooms or the C-suites. But that's not a guarantee. So there's two things that I know that Hope is constantly looking at. One is the consistent development of your social networks and individuals that are going to be your champions, either in the political arena or in your career or in your personal and your finances. So having a group of individuals from various backgrounds and social to really capitalize and create that social capital is going to be part of that equation. So having the education, but also having the access and the social capital is going to be extremely important for Latinas in the future. So I think the answer to the question is keep on working on your social capital, keep on working on ensuring that you're living the values that you want to see, so that if you are supportive of other Latinas, please be supportive of other Latinas as they run for office, but also be a champion for them in the corporate environment, be a champion for them in with their small businesses. So a lot of it, the good news, a lot of it is in our power and to empower each other. I wanted to, I see we're 5 minutes out. I don't see any other questions. So I just wanted to close out with a few shout outs of gratitude. Once again, I want to highlight the incredible work that Dr. Elsa Macias has been doing with Hope for over 13 years in our reports to ensure we have the data to start talking about our stories and our lived experiences and shaping that data into policy recommendations. And I want to remind everyone, please send us your policy recommendations. How do you see us moving forward as a community? I also want to give an incredible, once again, thank you to Patty Juarez and the whole Wells Fargo team for their consistent support of Hope and the research that we're doing and the financial literacy work that we've been doing together. Education, both from an attainment of degrees to the attainment of our financial literacy and financial wellness, is truly important. And we're just so grateful that we're in partnership with Wells Fargo in this journey. The last thing that I'll wrap up around is this conversation around political representation. And the key thing, regardless of the state, is that we have yet to meet parity when it comes to our political representation. And so oftentimes political representation doesn't just mean elected office. Please look at the various ways that you can join commissions. Go to your politicians and let them know that you want to serve your community as a commissioner. Hope had a huge victory this year with the signing of SB 702, which was authored and put forward for the fourth time by an incredible senator, Senator Monique Lamont. The fourth time we put it out there, and it's a better bill than the first time we put it out, because this bill specifically, and if you're listening from other states, maybe you can get this passed in your state. Illinois, we copied your bill, so thank you so much already for your leadership. This bill, what it does is requires the governor of California, as well as our state legislature and our assembly, to put together every year a composition, a demographic report on the commissioners, so we can see where the gaps are when it comes to gender, race, ethnicity, geography, and social income. So there's a few ways that we can ensure that our voices are being represented when key decisions are being made. So remember, some of these commissioners have power over how our water is being quite frankly, safe for us to drink, how the safety around our environment. And here in California, the California Public Utilities Commission has almost power over every decision from transportation to water to electricity to telecommunications. So I just urge everyone to look at opportunities to serve your community as a commissioner. This bill allows us to track what those opportunities are and to raise our hands to volunteer. With that, as we wrap up, just want to thank everyone, specifically the incredible Hope team, that this has been almost a 2-year journey to put together this report. A big shout out to the Hope team, Maya, Natalie, Anayi, Siamara, Diana, Johanna. I can go on and on. We're just so grateful to be working with all of you in your leadership and getting this report together. So with that, I sign off. I look forward to this continued conversation and this continued coming together as a community to ensure economic prosperity. Oh, I have one last thing I want to share. So Dr. Macias shared that there's over 2.5 million small businesses being run by Latinas. Imagine if we helped all those small businesses enough to get them to hire at least one other employee or their first employee. That would be close to 5 million jobs that we can produce for our community. So I just wanted to leave you with that optimistic target that we can be the wealth generation and engine to create 5 million jobs. Let's do that. Thank you so much for your time and your sharing of our information in our report.